guys, it's Caitlin and welcome back to my channel. I know that has been a little while since I have been on YouTube and I did not do that intentionally, by the way. It just happens that I got caught up in doing this edit for my debut What Lies Above and I have not posted a video in about a month, but I'm ready to jump back in and start creating more content for you guys for this channel. If you follow me on Instagram, which is at author Caitlin Lambert, then you have seen that I have been posting over there on Instagram and a little bit on Twitter, but mostly on Instagram. I've still been pretty active over there, so you can go follow me. I post a lot of updates about publishing, indie publishing, my writing journey, writing tips, bookish stuff, just everything related to reading and writing, and myself if you're interested in any updates about my personal writing journey as well. For those of you that do not know, I am currently self-publishing my debut novel, What Lies Above, which was supposed to release on August 29th, but because of COVID and everything, I think I'm going to have to push it back a little bit, and because of a major edit that I am doing, but I'm going to talk about all of that in a future video. So for now, just know that I am releasing my first book sometime this year. I'm not exactly sure when the release date will be, but I have been documenting a lot of my progress and everything that I've been learning, both here on my YouTube channel and over on Instagram. So again, my handle is author Caitlin Lambert, and you can go follow me over there if you are interested. I will also include all of my social media links down below in the description box so that you can find me everywhere that I am on the interwebs. So, what are we going to be doing today? Today is going to be part 4, the final part in my series, which is on planning and plotting a novel, and I will also link to all of the first 3 videos down below in the description box as well. I talked about everything, well not everything, but a lot of things related to planning and plotting, and I also in one video went into depth about 3, I believe, and it's been a little while since I filmed that video, but 3 different plotting techniques that you can use, and that video had a ton of information in it. So go and definitely check that out if you are a little bit confused on how to go about plotting and if you're looking for some strategies to do that. Today we're going to be talking about making character profiles, and a few weeks ago I polled you guys on Twitter, or on Instagram, I polled you guys on Instagram asking if you guys even wanted to see this video, because to me it seemed almost like it's going to be common knowledge, and I'm going to be doing a screen recording in a second, which is why I'm sitting here at my desk and showing you all how to basically make a mock character profile. Just an example, you can make any type of one that you want, and that's something that's really important and something that I've stressed in all of the videos in this series, is that you want to find what works for you. So you can make a character profile any way you want. You can print it out, pin it on a board, you can make like a vision board sort of thing, you can do it on Pinterest, you can do whatever you want. I'm going to make one on Microsoft Word just as an example of things that you might want to put in the character profile. So the style and the organization might be different, but there's some key things that you want to include in your character profile, because they will definitely help you later on when you're writing. If you remember to include these things up front, it will help you to stay on top of all of your characters. For someone like me, my book has a ton of characters in it. They all have their own thing going, they all have their own story, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the video as well. But it can become very difficult to keep track of all of them, and something like eye color might slip away and you forget whether your character has blue or green eyes, and then you have to go dig in your novel to figure it out because you want to have consistency. So making a character profile for each character, or at least for the main ones, can be really helpful in avoiding some of those little inconsistencies and saving yourself a lot of trouble later. Even though I thought that it was probably common knowledge and you guys might not have wanted to see it, a lot of you guys actually said you would rather see the character profile video than another video which I had asked you about, because I had considered just skipping over this, ending the series on plotting and planning and moving on to a new video series, but you guys said you wanted to see this part, so we are going to be doing it today, and I'm going to be making a mock character profile. So we're going to hop on over here to my computer. I'm going to do a screen recording, and then what I'm going to do is use one of my main characters, Eva, as an example for the character profile, but there's some spots that I'm going to leave blank because they are very spoilery, because you want to get as in-depth as you possibly can or want to in your character profile. So I'm not going to include everything that you might include in your character profile. I'm not going to go into that much depth, but I will tell you the main points and what you would put in there if you were doing this for your character. So let's hop on over here and start making our profile. Get started on this character profile. I want to go ahead and apologize in advance because I do not have an external microphone. So if my voice sounds a little bit muffled, that's because I'm just using the internal microphone on my MacBook. So I'm very sorry, but hopefully you guys can still hear me well enough and you'll be able to see what I'm doing. So hopefully that will be helpful too. So let's start off with her name. You want to put full name here. So I am putting her full name, Evangeline West, and then in parentheses Eva, which is what she goes by and what the chapters are titled. Because it's alternating point of view, the chapters alternate between Eva and Eli. They're titled with her shorter name, her nickname Eva, which is what most people call her. So next we're going to do her age, and she is 16 and she turned 17 towards the end of the book, so I'm going to put /17. These are all pretty common character traits that might seem really simple and might seem like they're not even important to know, but trust me, there's nothing that is more frustrating than forgetting what eye color your character has and having to go and dig through the book to figure out whether you gave them green eyes or brown eyes or blue eyes. Just having it somewhere so that you know, hey, she has brown eyes, I'm going to have her have brown eyes every single time. It can help you so much and save you a lot of trouble later on because you want to be consistent. And even though it might not seem like readers will pick up on it, readers might pick up on the fact that your character has blue eyes in the beginning and brown eyes at the end. So you want to have as much consistency as completely possible, 100% consistency. So writing it down can just be so helpful in remembering. So we have eye color, then we have hair color, and then I'm also going to put beside her hair color a little bit of a more description. Again, you can go as much in depth as you want, but for now, I'm just going to put brown hair, and then it's about a foot below her shoulders. That's the length of it, and it's wavy. And then I'll also have a photo that I'll put over there so then I can get a visual of the hair as well. So, relationships. What this means is, are there any other relationships with other characters in the book? That could be a romantic relationship, a familial relationship, a friendship, like relationships that you deem as important. So for example, if Evangeline has family members in the book, what are their names? And then that will tie them to those character profiles that you make for those characters. Is Eva in a romantic relationship with somebody? You want to write that down. So I'm just going to put family, romantic, etc. because I'm not going to tell you any of the relationships that would give away spoilers, especially romantic ones and whatnot. So I'm just going to put that in the blank to give you an idea of what you might want to write there. And then in parentheses, let's say, for example, there was a character, this is not realistic, but let's say there was a character in the book named Joe, and Joe was Eva's brother. I would put it like that. I'd put the character's name and then the relationship to this character in parentheses. Next, you're going to do the setting. This is where they live, and you can change this based on the development of the story. So in the beginning, the character might be one place, and then they travel around. For example, Eva, she lives in an underground city, and it's called Subterra. And that's where she's at in the beginning of the book. That's where she's lived all of her life. So that's the most relevant and important setting. To give you another example, I just read Children of Blood and Bone. So for that, if you were doing setting, you might want to put the village that the main character lives in the beginning, because that is a really important setting to the book. In the Hunger Games, you might want to say District 12 is an important setting. You could also say the arena. Whatever you think is relevant and important to this character, you can put that in setting. Or you could put the name of the country, or let's say it's a contemporary book, you could put what state or city they live in or what country. Now, for culture, religion, and ideologies, I add this because especially if your book has a very well-established magic system, or it has its own religion, or you have a contemporary book and religion is important to your main character, this can be important to put here because that's part of the character's identity. So for example, to use Children of Blood and Bone, since I just mentioned it, the magic system is incredibly well developed, and there's also a religion that is tied into the magic system as well. So that might be something that you would put here if you were writing, if Children of Blood and Bone was your book, just as an example. Culture, it can also be really important if you have a main character that is a person of color or comes from another culture, or you have a culture that you have made up in a fantasy book. You can put all of those things here, whatever you think is important to the main character or secondary character's personality and their development and what makes them them, because all of these things are important to who we are as people. If you think about real people, our culture, our religion, our ideologies, how we see the world, they are the foundation often of who we are, even if we do not hold to them still, if we've changed. They often make up who we are as a person, and that's the same for the character. These things can really impact who they are, their decisions, their motivations, their weaknesses and strengths, which we'll talk about next. So you would want to put all of those things there. All right, so let's move on to strengths. There can be all kinds of strengths, and they can be not only personality strengths, which would be like kindness, bravery, things like that, but they can also be physical strengths or talents that they have, abilities. For example, a character in What Lies Above, he's able to hack really well, so he can get into systems and kind of subvert technology in order to use it for his own purposes, and that's really, really important in the story, and that's one of his strengths. That's something he's learned to do well over time. So you can put whatever strengths that you want here. Those things are going to benefit this character throughout the book. Then we come to weaknesses, and there are all kinds of weaknesses that your character can have, and this is so important and often missed in books in general, I think, or when writing, especially for amateur authors. They don't include any weaknesses for the character, and weaknesses are what make us as humans human and what makes the characters human as well. It makes them relatable, and readers want to see weaknesses in characters. Oftentimes these weaknesses are often what causes them to fall, and if you watched I think it was part 2 video in this series on plotting, there were some plotting strategies, and in the 15 Save the Cat beats, one of the beats is called Dark Soul of the Night, or Dark Night of the Soul, and it's where the character has hit rock bottom. Everything seems to be lost. A lot of times in books, a character's weakness or flaw can cause issues, maybe not the main issue, but they can often cause roadblocks and issues for the character along the way, and that is what strengthens stories so much, is having those relatable, realistic weaknesses. And to help you guys out, in case you were like, I have no idea what weakness I can add, or an example of that, I have this website that I found, which is on writerswrite.com, and it's 123 ideas for character flaws, and they also give you some examples. So for example, there's 3 types of main, and here's some examples right here. So in Little Women, Jo March's bluntness and stubbornness cause conflict with her family. In Macbeth, the protagonist suffers from excessive pride and therefore murders the king. In Peter Pan, Captain Hook is obsessed with Peter Pan. So you can see in Pride and Prejudice, Darcy and Elizabeth both show degrees of pride and prejudice. So the weaknesses in these characters create conflict for them. As you can see in Little Women, it caused conflict with her family. It's going to cause conflict for the characters, and conflict makes for great books. So I will link this down below in the description box so that you guys can go and check it out, but look at all of these different weaknesses that your character can have. And it just makes the story way more engaging and the characters more relatable. All right, so now we're going to move on to desires and goals. This is what is the end result that your character wants. And because I cannot discuss this with Eva because it would be spoilery, I'm going to use Katniss Everdeen from The Hunger Games, which is one of my favorite examples to use when doing illustrations, because hers is very clear. Her desire or goal is to, first of all, at the beginning of the book, protect her sister and provide for her sister. But whenever Prim's name is pulled for the Hunger Games, her desire then becomes to survive in the arena so that she can get back to her sister. So that is her desire and goal. She has 2, and there's probably a lot more in the book, but those are some of the main ones. Then if you want to move down here and look at motivations, I also just mentioned what Katniss's motivation is, and these 2 are actually different, so I'm going to write that down to differentiate. Her desire or goal is to protect and provide for her sister Prim, and then also to survive in the arena during the Hunger Games, which she volunteers for in place of her sister. Motivations, although it might seem similar, it's actually a different thing. They tie together, but they are different. If you look at her desire, it's to protect her sister and survive in the arena. But then you might say, what is her motivation to survive in the arena? Why does she want to survive? And this also ties back to Prim. It's because she wants to return to her sister, who she has basically raised because of her relationship with her mother, where after their father died, their mother kind of went into this depression where she was not able to take care of the kids, so Katniss ended up raising Prim for the last few years. So for this motivation, you can say, why does she want to survive the arena? Because she wants to return to her sister, Prim, in District 12. And this is very surface level. You could go so deep and into detail with this, and that's what you want to do, as much depth as you can. It will be very helpful for fleshing out these characters when you start drafting. All right, so now story arc. This is probably one of the most important parts, and let me explain a little bit of what it is. This is where you are going to write out the entire arc in as much depth as you can for this character. This is going to be very obvious if the character is your point of view character or main character, because the story revolves around them. But I feel like this is actually even more critical to do in a character profile for a secondary character, because oftentimes secondary characters can become pawns just in the story to help the main character achieve their goal, and so they come in and out of the story as the main character needs them. But once you start developing the individual story arc for these secondary characters, they become so much more realistic and fleshed out, and they're not just a pawn to be used for the main character's story. They're real people, and that makes the story seem so much more realistic and not just cookie cutter serving the purposes of the main character. I have found that I often will write story arcs for secondary characters because they then also tie into the main character. There's overlap. Obviously, they're in the same world and in the same story, but they still stand on their own, and their character arcs intertwine. So that's why it's so helpful to split them apart, to look at them character by character and create a really in-depth character arc for all of your secondary characters as well. So, for example, to go back to the Hunger Games illustration, you might make a character arc for Peeta, and you might include that he was a baker's son and that he threw the bread to Katniss and why he threw the bread to Katniss, and you don't want to center it on Katniss's reaction or Katniss's feelings. You want to center it on Peeta's. Why did he do that? What was his life like at the bakery? How he feels about being drawn to go into the arena. Center it on that character, and then add in these strengths, add in these weaknesses, add in their own desires and goals, because that will flesh out the secondary character so much. You want them to feel like their own people, and it makes it so interesting whenever you're following the main character's story, but these secondary characters also come in and out with their own motivations, and oftentimes those can become stumbling blocks for the main character, especially if that character is a villain. So, last thing to do is to find an image, and I have two right here, which are character inspiration for my main character, Eva. So I could choose either one of these to use as her character inspiration. I'm going to pick, let's see, I'll pick this one over here because it's easier to drag it over. So what I'm going to do is just make this smaller, and then I'm going to take this image and drag it over here into this box. And voila, we have a picture to go along with our descriptor. I feel like this is incredibly helpful, which is why I love to use Pinterest, because having visualizations of my characters help me in describing them, and I just like looking at my cast of characters, so attaching a picture just makes them seem so much more realistic in my head and helpful whenever I'm writing. So that is pretty much all for the character profiles. There's so much more that we could talk about and so much more depth that we could go into, but I just wanted to give you guys an overview. Hopefully you thought that this was helpful. If you did, please let me know in the comments and give it a like, because I really wasn't sure about making this video. I was kind of on the fence about it. I thought it would just be repetitive and obvious, but a lot of you guys wanted it, so I really hope that I was able to help you in some way with how to go about creating your own character profiles.